fade in of white noise and screaming into the hard cutoff is so jarring, and then just Jim's first words and 28 days later. Decent recap. Agreed, if you got kids, this is about as far as they should make it into this movie, and I truly wish this sign had applied to poor Spike. I do appreciate a sequel that just jumps in where the last one left off. Do your own research, losers. Kinda getting a Droogs vibe from the fingers, and yeah, I don't like it.
See this? See that? I'll make it easier for you.
Arrogance often leads to downfall, but to be fair, the way the fingers took out Infected at the end of the last one, I'd probably assume I could take a 12-year-old too. And yes, that's a reminder that Spike is 12! Which is why this extremely easy overpowering makes sense, since this Jimmy looks to be in his early to mid-20s. And I think Spike knows exactly what he's doing. That's the same knife he threatened his dad with, just reminding us that Spike has at least a bit of experience in knowing where kill shots are.
That's an artery, is it there?
Nope, I'm already out. I don't do femoral stabs, it's not for me. So we're just gonna cut back to before the stabbing while I ramble. But that's what we call arterial spray. You see, blood from an artery, the blood vessels that take oxygenated blood away from the heart, is a brighter red than from a vein, the vessels that take blood back to the heart. But sometimes people think arterial blood looks fake in a movie, but that's just because they don't know, but now you know. Also, all of this was blurred, so you'll have to watch it on Nebula if you want to know what I'm talking about. But be sure to take a Stop the Bleed course. Amazing shot to have Jimmy Prime casting his shadow over Jimmy Shite. Interesting hand symbol, most likely signifying death or the soul leaving or something like that. However, it's the audible sound that would have freaked me out.
I think your name is...
It's Jimmy.
Jimmy.
You have to wonder if at this point Jimmy, decided dealing with his angry dad and his side piece seemed a lot more appealing than roughing it on your own. Look, you just heard me glaze young fathers for an entire video, so I do not envy anyone trying to follow them. And here comes Hildur Guðnadóttir to make me bite my tongue with her first piece. It's dark and depressing and also contrasts so hard against Jemima stabbing a zombie as it hits its peak volume. And is that Kelson's fire off in the distance? Lovely little detail of having his backpack behind him on the ground. Clearly he's been traveling. Mind was blown when I saw this. This is the first time we actually see what the infected see, and it makes sense why they're so angry. Oh, Samson, you scamp. You and your giant hog are up to your same old hijinks again. You don't even have to see it. Just the sounds are enough to turn your stomach. I kind of appreciate this little, oh, they aren't zombies, then explain this moment here. This is like the primary defining factor. But I thought maybe we were headed in an iZombie direction for a second here, but it's mostly just another possibility for why alphas are alphas.
An infected patient. Possibly a world's first.
I'd imagine that's actually Alice, but she was more of a carrier than infected.
You owe me, by the way. Just kidding. I'm NHS. No charge.
Must be nice. Love how his front teeth are chipped. It makes sense that he'd want to keep the pelvic area bones from the only known full-term zombie pregnancy. You probably heard Kelson singing earlier, and then this pic confirms he's a Duran Duran ultra fan. And it would be super tough to not be able to pump any jams in this dystopian future. Kelson's a lucky man to still have his faves.
I'm going to trust you, Samson. I have what you want right here. If you kill me, if my head is pulled from my shoulders, you won't get to have it. And it's a quid pro quo.
I genuinely did not see this plotline coming, and it ended up being my favorite.
Suddenly, I'm not entirely sure you understand Latin.
Honestly, I think only people at Kelson's level of culture and intelligence could survive like this and not go totally mad. I bet he cracks himself up all day.
I wonder if you understand anything I say. If not the meaning of my words, the meaning in the tone of my voice.
Also, you'd have to have a buttery smooth Ralph Fiennes voice to survive these encounters as well. No offense to girls on film, but now we get rewarded for Kelson being a Duran Duran stan. And it's proof that he has more than one Duran Duran record, though ironically both albums are self-titled Duran Duran. For real though, the Wedding album is a banger. It also has Come Undone on it. But joy is always rare in these films, so seeing him dance is big. It's actually kinda cute. Samson is saying hi in the only way he knows how. And maybe bringing Kelson a gift too. I heard you like bones. That's Samson's voice, right? It's gotta be Samson's voice. Well, that escalated quickly, but I would have rather watched a whole movie of this. I get why they brought in the fingers, and maybe we only get this because of that, but I would love a semi-feel-good 28 Days of first film. If you're gonna make a bone temple for your movie, you're gonna wanna shoot it stunningly like this. And if it weren't for the treetops, you might not even notice it's a time-lapse to get the cloud effect. The jars jittering just add to the creep factor. Also, I'm really tempting fate here by continuing to play the song, but listen to the words I'm saying, Warner Chappell music. The usage of the song softens this desolate world, offering us a reprieve, but the way it fades out as we come back to the Memento Mori Bone Temple is perfect, because when you decrease the volume of music, it does that thing where it sounds like it's going out of key, and we're reminded that, no, everything does still suck in this universe.
If he sees us, he's gonna scream. Don't.
This is tough because I feel like I get both staying quiet and hoping they pass by and also taking the threat out. Obviously, we end up seeing the downside of the latter. You never get used to just how much blood gets bombed. 4 movies in and it's still disgustingly shocking every time. Hey, what a quaint little barn. Maybe we'll get to hang out there later.
We have guests.
What?
We have guests.
Immediate chills when he says we have guests. The fingers look weird anyway, but in contrast to normal-looking people, they look absolutely insane.
Do you not know the Teletubbies?
I mean, he's right. The telly was on their tums, so why weren't they called the Teletubbies? My skin was crawling at this point. Everything about Jimmy and the fingers is just so disturbing.
Are you going to leave?
Yes. But obviously we're going to kill you first.
Honesty. That scream. Truly an inspired death blow. The quick slash and then the roll to avoid the spray. Love the setup of bright red Jimmy ink as the camera tilts up to the Bone Temple.
And so old Nick released his demons unto the world of man. And the world of man fell before the demons. And God did nothing.
As a PK, I'm sure Jimmy sat through many sermons, but he's shaky on some of the details from his past. He calls the Teletubbies the Teletummies. The Dipsy dance seems totally made up because I could not, in fact, find Dipsy shaking her bum. And it seems like he thinks Jimmy Savile's last name was Crystal, but I think that religion tends to fall into a certain cadence, and even this call and answer he does with his fingers is evidence of it.
How's that?
How's that?
You alone shall be my heir. I am Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, favored son of old Nick.
Yeah, it's at this point in Jimmy's sermon that I'd really start freaking out as well. Oh, he's like crazy, this is gonna suck.
The removal of the shirt.
I don't know why Spike would know what this is since it seems like his first charity, but he's probably learned enough about them to know it's gonna be bad. Correct.
The opiate peace you have found with me will end.
Love this auditory effect, like we're hearing Kelson's echoey voice through Samson's ears. I giggle every time I see Burrito Rafe all bundled up, having a sleepover with his bud. Dang, and the train sounds when he looks at the moon. They're always the signal of Samson's waking up.
And I think you want to have peace too, and that's why you've become friends. Good friends.
Beggars can't be choosers, am I right? I'd be befriending the woodland creatures, but in all seriousness, this entire sequence makes me love Kelson so much. He's ironically and possibly deliberately one of the most Christological figures in a recent movie. He doesn't judge Samson, he forgives him and tries to offer him peace. Hot dang, 4 movies in and they all could have been rehabilitated. I'm mostly upset about Frank. I do love this, though. It's easy to miss how amazing Chai Lewis Perry's performance is because he's just a zombie. But then you remember that he's not. He's an actual guy who does it so well that you take it for granted. So much so that when he speaks, it blows our minds almost as much as Kelson's.
Moon.
Also, these two scenes happening concurrently are the entire movie distilled. Kelson has taken a living monster who rips people's heads off and is offering him peace while also attempting to rehabilitate him, and Jimmy and the Fingers repaid a group of innocents hospitality with the cruelest torture imaginable to serve a fake deity. Look, I'm not even pretending to show any of this, because good lord. But I will say that cutting from the screaming outside to the screaming inside sets my teeth on edge exactly the way it's supposed to. It's such a jolt. The entire scene is awful, and I hate it. And I don't think there are any winners, but being last, having watched what your friends had to go through, has to be a special kind of psychological torture knowing you're next. The look on his face says it all. Just knowing and even hearing what's happening doesn't convey the full picture. So glad we got to see it.
Too fucking easy.
I make it look easy.
Jimmy Prime is obviously super messed up, but Jemima is my favorite. She's the craziest kook of them all. A little bummed she goes out here.
I want to take his trousers off.
Granted, I'm super glad this didn't have to happen. But nah, see, this is where you flail and fight like a toddler until they're forced to kill you.
Getting fresh. Cold, please.
Honestly, less horrifying streams of consciousness than I expected from the girl who skins people while wearing butterfly wings. It's rare that we see Jimmy Prime mad at all. Now that's some ingenuity.
Don't mind me, I'm overthinking it.
Even torture scenes can have good comedic timing. Hang on, I just gotta go puke before we continue. Again, not showing anything much here, but I can't decide if being burned alive after being skinned alive is like a mercy. Is your nervous system so messed up that you just pass out quick? That's what I'm going with. Hey, good landing, and well prego.
Please take me with you.
It sucks, but I really do not blame her. She has no idea how long he's been with them, and Jemima was batshite.
Jimmy here had no choice. He was in danger of being overpowered by a pregnant woman.
Jack O'Connell's performance really steals the show. Just his mannerisms and head scratches. Dude is terrifying.
Did you not think to cut off her face? Bring that to me. Or her unborn child. Anything really that showed a bit of f***ing initiative.
And it's not like he's the first character to ever state grotesque action items like a middle management Lumberg, but he does it so believably.
An alpha, no less. An alpha. Sat at his master's feet like a f***ing lamb.
I mean, to not come to the conclusion that she does would be insane. Kelson's little experiment plays right into Jimmy's theory about Old Nick and why the world ended. I swear, I was ready to bail on this movie, and then they threw everything in its right place at me and completely redeemed themselves. Eating something other than human flesh or brains is obviously huge, but the thing you might actually miss is his desire to clean his fingers. That's not a zombie characteristic. And then Kelson pushes deeper into my heart as we learn Radiohead is diegetic.
Is that actually Old Nick?
Is that actually Old Nick? Is that actually Old Nick? Is it?
Gotta love that Jimmy is playing out all the outcomes in his head, trying to decide how he can use this all to his advantage, whether he thinks it's actually Satan or not.
That is Old Nick.
Holy f***ing shit.
And holy f***ing shit.
It's sad, but also right in line with what we've seen that they immediately believe it. I wouldn't say Jimmy looks disturbed or scared, but he's definitely got less confidence and swagger than we're used to. All he really knows for sure is that he's lying about knowing this guy is Old Nick. Every other option is on the table, including him being correct and Old Nick being pissed at him.
Hello.
Kelson, I really do love ya. Notice he instinctively reaches for his dart gun, but doesn't pick it up, trying to show a little trust.
So, are you Old Nick?
I'm not Satan.
I'm sweating. I thought I was about to meet my father.
I honestly hadn't even considered that Jimmy was just genuinely nervous to meet his dad.
So, you believe all this zombie shite was caused by science and bugs and whatnot?
Rather than...
Old Nick?
I see. So I'm an atheist. You're a Satanist.
Well, there it is.
Again, if it wasn't for the Satanism that led him to torture and murder, Jimmy's a pretty cool dude. It's part of why the opening of this movie was such a shock after the ending of the last one.
Never mind.
I don't mind talking.
Just, I don't actually know my father too well.
This is the moment that I think we all ever so slightly soften to Jimmy because he's not entirely a grifter. The only part he thinks he's being dishonest about is how close he is to Old Nick. It's a human moment for the psychopath. A very big hint that Jimmy Inc. isn't totally down with being Jimmy since her real name is Kelly.
The real question is Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal his son? Is he even a real Sir Lord?
And this is also super interesting because it goes along with a confession Jimmy's making to Kelson right now. That she'd buy into everything else Jimmy has said, but still into it that the part he might be lying about is his level of importance.
I do remember there was a sense of certainty. The foundations, they seemed unshakable.
I'm starting to think that's part of the human condition. You think the Romans knew what was coming? Do we?
What about your father?
He was leading the infected, Ian. He was leading the demons on the charge.
It might seem like Jimmy is deflecting to his imaginary father, Old Nick, but when we go back and watch the scene, I could understand why that's his memory.
I'm in a bit of a bind, Ian, because if you can't help me with my problem, I'm going to force feed you your own intestines until you can no longer breathe.
Yes, that is a bind.
Honesty. I really enjoy watching a guy play everything perfectly correct. He's been sussing out, even diagnosing Jimmy slowly, and knows it's best to play along and not react the way most humans would.
When the infected attack, what do they see? I've seen them kill children and babies. So you must be seeing something that isn't there.
And I love that the most terrifying figure in this movie, for all intents and purposes, is Kelson's bestie, and the actual threat is just an Irish vampire or something. Saving the newbie.
I had to kill him.
That's not what happened.
Even now, Jimmy is certain she's lying, but truly believes it's all going to shake out in his favor. Unfortunately, those aren't the right kind of red poppies, otherwise Kelson would be set for life. Again, Che's performance is so underrated. It's like he's become aware of his hands for the first time in his life, and he still doesn't quite carry himself right, which makes sense after zombie shuffling and flailing for decades. Your muscles would eventually adapt, and walking normal would be difficult. Storycam. Our director, Nia DaCosta. OMG, this is the day. That's the infected hobbling through the train car. Dang, they picked the correct actor with those pronounced cheekbones, and the lighting really makes her eyes seem even more deep set.
Take it!
Well, I guess it wasn't just the rage.
Okay, let's turn this up to 11.
Again, just making references for himself. Not even Jimmy would have been old enough to see Spinal Tap. LOL. What was I saying about Christological figures? Another absolutely magnificent time lapse. He's home.
Woe to you, O earth and sea. The number of the beast, its number is 666.
Barry Clayton did this narration for Iron Maiden, and luckily he sounds an awful lot like Ralph Fiennes as Satan. This all goes to poop, which is kind of a bummer because this head shake from Jimmy says, "I asked for gold and you gave me diamonds." He's shaking his head in disbelief at how much Ian is crushing this. And Jimmy Prime immediately gets into it because even for him, who knows that music is a thing that exists, this would be mind-blowing. The rest of them are probably about to shoot into orbit. In equal parts, I love the character, Ian Kelson, who is really, truly selling this, and I love that Ralph Fiennes is also chewing up the Bone Temple. Honestly, it doesn't even matter what this is. Meth, Molly, ketamine, it out he has cocaine, but it's clearly not morphine, some kind of upper, possibly with a little psychoactive properties, psilocybin maybe, since they seem to be having a mostly good time. Again, I can't state enough how much Kelson nailed this. Half of them died from or are still recovering from fire, and he's dancing in it. I have to guess he went to go take the needle off the record, so Run to the Hills didn't play, but dang, it would have also worked really well.
Continue skinning and disemboweling the mewling souls of your kingdom. That is your command, Father.
Yes.
It would be easy to judge Kelson here, but I really can't. Jimmy didn't say, "We'll kill you." He laid out how he'd torture Kelson, and while I want to say I wouldn't be part of condemning others to this fate, I'm not going to pretend like it would be easy to basically step into their place. And as often happens, putting a face to the horrors makes it real in a new way. Kelson still knows he's probably not making it out of this, but seeing Spike snapped his fortitude back into place. This guy was Voldemort, so it's not the biggest surprise, but he's got this look down. I'd buy it.
Christ was first required to be crucified.
Yeah, he's gonna bang me into that cross.
They are.
And even though Kelson knows he's putting his life on the line now, it was smart to keep the ruse going. I mean, this lines up with pretty much everything we're taught about the devil. Being important to him wouldn't be a good thing for you.
You fiend.
Fun fact, that's the correct usage of fiend. We usually hear it associated with addicts, which is acceptable now, but its original definition is an extremely cruel person, an evil spirit, or a demon.
Who's the devil?
I am Jimmy.
And there it is. I'm glad he's finally realized it. This is like The Slap, but The Slap Part 2, but it's Jimmy Inc. begging people not to walk into her knife. The shakiness of the knife makes you think maybe Spike was scared or had regrets, but the dude is just teeming with rage. You could see it in his face the second Jimmy stabbed Kelson.
How's that?
Haha, got him.
You're not.
No one is. There's just us.
The way she crumbles so easily is more evidence of what Jimmy put them through. They never heard any dissenting opinions.
I think you've suffered enough.
Well, that got me good. He's even got the wound in his side Jesus. Man, can't imagine if this movie came out in the 90s, there would have been protests. Dang, it's gotta be cold there for us to see Samson's breath, and he's still hanging strong.
Kelson, thank you.
Thankfulness.
Memento mori.
I never like when protagonists die, but Kelson seems truly at peace. Earlier he said,
I live alone. My work is complete.
and ultimately he chose to save Spike over himself, so that's self-sacrifice. Bringing back Hilder's bare bones helps, and now we're hearing its true range. It's not like it was ever a happy song, but it's as if the entire movie it's been nudging us, trying to prepare us for this moment.
Father, why have you forsaken me?
Jimmy sucks. He's evil, he did evil things and forced others to do evil things. He's also a victim of both the apocalypse and a biological father who truly forsook him. His last words really do make me feel for him, even if he still sucks. And the Satan getup that Jimmy is seeing is fantastic. Comeuppance. I somehow managed to avoid this spoiler and couldn't wipe the big dumb grin off my face when I saw water and then the car and the house.
In the Second World War, instead of bankrupting Germany, the world helped it rebuild. Within a generation, they had recovered into economies that had outstripped most of their victors.
Cillian Murphy is always a win. Bro, just casually walking in. I don't even care. And it's just so satisfying to know he survived.
Why help your defeated enemy? Because the enforced bankruptcy of the enemy after World War I was the reason for World War II.
I'm sure there are scholars debating these points to this day, but hot dang if he isn't exemplifying Kelson's ethos with this history lesson. No one benefits from a neighbor in ruin. Investing in peace, as Kelson did by healing Samson, even though his crimes were innumerable, is the way you move forward. Kelson was doing his own little micro Marshall Plan.
Fascism, nationalism, populism, totally dismantled. Never to return.
Sorry, dang. So you're saying the zombie island had the better timeline. That sure looks like her mom's machete, and that's definitely Selena's leather duster.
Dad, do we help them?
Of course we do.
Good guy, Jim. It's like a breath of fresh air after spending the movie with the Jimmies. More. Give me more! Apparently Bone Temple didn't do as well as expected, but if I lose out on the best legacy sequel of all time, give me Jim, Sam, Spike, and Kelly fighting zombies or I will riot! Oh right, also In the House in a Heartbeat will never not be the best song in a movie ever. So look, I have complicated feelings about the Bone Temple, and the best way to explain it is to explain how this job can be weird sometimes. Because I have, 3 different ways I watch movies. There's watching for my own enjoyment, which is rare by itself, but it's always the intention for my first watch of a movie, even if it's for a video. I try my best to avoid writing wins in my head. Then there's the actual writing portion, where I'm often jotting stuff down, scene descriptions with timestamps, and then the win, which sometimes comes out fully formed, although it's rare for a first draft win to stay the same all the way through. Then, regardless of who wrote that first draft, whether it's me or my writer, Ruben, I go back through again and clean it all up, adding in wins where I couldn't articulate my thoughts yet, and I get closer to a final script. Then I record, making last-minute changes, occasionally watching scenes as I do to help with whatever reaction I wanted, and then there's the edit. My editor Henry does an assembly cut of the video, and I review it, and then he does more, and we pass it back and forth. But the last viewing is the least like actually watching the movie, but it's part of the point I swear I'm getting to. For my first watch, I did not immediately enjoy the Bone Temple. In fact, here's my Slack conversation with Ruben. It was so bad, I was happy I hadn't asked Julia to watch it with me because she's not a huge fan of torture, generally. Weird, I know. But she liked 28 Years Later even more than I did the first time, so I was conflicted. I did actually decide to watch it with her after explaining why I initially thought she might not enjoy it, and after the barn scene she said, "I can't believe you're making me watch this." But then she liked it by the end, so the only thing I really learned is that we're very similar people. The point of this story is that when I went to go write, I was still sorta avoiding the scene, and in the final video you'll notice that we did mostly avoid it. I didn't skip it entirely because some important and interesting things happen, but also because by the second time through I was already feeling differently about it. It was only a week later, and the memory I'd built in my brain about how graphic it was turns out was mostly a lie. Now, it's graphic, I can say that objectively, it's icky. But then, getting into the edit, everything became clinical, I guess is the word I'd use. Henry does a lot of the censoring, but sometimes I shift scenes around and have to do some myself, and it becomes just pixels and colors and shapes, and I don't know, it's weird. Once my brain became desensitized to the gore and violence, I was able to appreciate the movie way more. I was still dreading having to come back to the scene even as I was getting toward the end of my first viewing and liking the movie more and more. And yeah, Killian was a huge part of that, but Kelson and Jimmy's endings also shifted my feelings. Now that the skinning scene is meh, I want to recommend the movie to everyone. But I have to remember the caveat that they're only going to watch it once, and that scene is most likely going to impact their feelings. Does any of this make sense? I don't feel queasy anymore, so I quite enjoy the movie overall. That said, all my whinging about the scene is exactly what I was supposed to feel. We're supposed to hate Jimmy while constantly thinking, dang, he is messed up with lots of trauma and mental health issues, probably schizophrenia if he's truly hearing voices. But you hate him and then you feel a touch sorry for him by the end, and it's a mind F. Which can be a sign of a good movie. The other thing about the skinning scene is that so much of what creates the visceral reaction is everything that isn't the visuals. Don't show the shark has become an idiom in Hollywood that basically means to appeal to the theater of the mind rather than put your scary monster front and center. The irony being that Jaws technically only held back on showing the shark because Bruce, the robot shark, looks stupid. But the carnage we imagine is often a billion times worse than what was or even can be filmed. And Danny Boyle uses every other facet of storytelling to get us there. The screams, the expressions on everyone else's faces, vomiting, and just the long, drawn-out buildup of Jimmy's speech. Heck, it starts even before they're in the barn. The moment we enter the house to see the Jimmys sitting there, we know this all ends poorly, especially because the last scene we saw the Jimmys in was where the leader callously and even happily let a comrade bleed out, barely emoting at Jimmy Scheidt's death.
Sort of getting. What are you getting, Jimmy? Getting hungry? Getting horny? Getting sleepy? Oh, sleepy.
It's an excellent setup for what he'll do to strangers. It's excellent filmmaking. My initial feeling about the scene, that it was unnecessary, probably has some truth to it, but viewed as a whole, dang, it works. I didn't plan to talk about one scene for the entire conclusion, but sometimes I've got thoughts, I guess. All that said, if the movie didn't stick the landing, I'd be pissed I wasted my time watching people get tortured, and I can still immerse myself in that moment if I really try to get that queasiness back, even the existential dread of it all. That people live their whole lives, make it through hell opening its doors only to be tortured and burned to death by other survivors? It makes me mad. It makes me want to do something. Another interesting thing is the crucifixion, because Kelson doesn't pretend to be, anything that he isn't. He's not Jesus, he's not a saint, he's definitely breaking the Hippocratic Oath by experimenting on Samson. Because it all works out, we think of him as noble and good, but it could just have easily gone to poop. But that's silly to even mention because he's in an apocalypse. He does an assisted suicide in part 1, and IRL, people would have thoughts and feelings about that, but it's painted as primarily a moral act in the movie. And given the circumstances, I tend to agree. So my gut reaction to Kelly saying she'll nail Jimmy to the cross is that if Kelson wasn't bleeding out, he might say, well, that's not very nice, and it's not needed anymore. We don't need to be cruel for cruelty's sake. Not least of all because his intention here is to save Spike, not just from Jimmy and the group of psychos, but from the future they'd create. Jimmy needed comeuppance, so for the movie, got him, LMAO. But the reality of Kelly doling out the punishment, being the one to nail a spike through his hands and feet, that's not awesome for her brain. And we want her to be good, so it leaves me feeling conflicted. I know I'm reading way too much into this. Kelly is also already a broken person who has absolutely been taking part in charity for a long time with the Jimmies.
I'm missing charity.
One more crucifixion isn't going to change much. I doubt many words have been written for the next movie if we ever even get to see it, but there are so many interesting directions to take these 4 characters. Our OG from the original Outbreak who went from a tourist to a participant to a challenger of the rules to a full-on survivor who let the apocalypse teach him.
Of course we do.
His daughter has only ever known that last part of him and has never known a safe world. Contrast that with Spike, who ironically probably had a more sheltered early childhood on his island than Sam, but learned to fight and defend and then was thrown into the deep end with the Jimmies, seeing both the extent of humanity's propensity, even penchant for cruelty, and what we'll all do to survive, even Kelson's act when faced with the option to be Satan or be disemboweled. And then Kelly comes from that torturer life, possibly not remembering much else. She was the only Jimmy to ever question Jimmy Prime, the only one who even seemed capable of it, in fact. But who knows where her path actually leads? Has empathy been completely carved out of her? It seems not, but dang, she has potential to be a scary person. And what is Jim gonna have to say when he learns about her past? All this to say, I'm really hoping they're able to finish the trilogy. Not much we can do to improve the box office, I guess. Go watch both on Netflix. Skip the scene if you need to. Honestly, muting it will go a long way. Even though these are both technically sequels to an existing IP, they're still original ideas, and I always want to support that kind of creation. Which is why I ended up having more to say, I guess. So thanks for listening to me, and let me know what your thoughts are.